Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. It's been a little bit of an adventure getting this Instagram Live going, but that's not a surprise. If any of you have ever done an Instagram Live or anything like this, you know that it can be a bit challenging, and it seems like it's always different. So we are in just a second here. I am so excited to chat with Libby Murdoch about her unique spin on EMDR. She has put her own stamp on it for her basic training, which she got approved through EMDRIA and has been offering. And I am just so incredibly impressed by that. So, hello, everybody. I see Erin, my former colleague and friend, Erin Spencer. Yay, everybody who's stopping by. Thank you so much. I'm Michelle Risser, in case we haven't met, and I am just making my way through this in-between week of it's kind of the holidays, but I'm working some, and yeah. So Libby should be here any second now. She says she's got it. I sent her an invite. So Libby, if you can hear me, see if you can find something that says ask to be a co-host. Oh no, it says unable to join. Why does it say unable to join? What? All right, Libby, try again. See if you can find a place where you can request to join, and it'll pop up on my end. This is always fun, whether you're on Instagram or Zoom, or it just seems like it's always different. It never works the same. Bear with me for a sec. This will be worth it, I promise. Okay, Libby's here. We just got to get her in. So, how's everybody doing so far? How is your year going? Feel free to drop a comment. Okay, it looks like Libby has joined. Let's see if it'll add her on here. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, everybody. Libby, I can see that you're here. It is telling me that you've joined, but it's not allowing you to be a co-host. Do you see? Oh, here it is. We got it. Da, 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 da. Yay! If you're still here through all this, thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Happy Friday.
There we
We
go.
finally got it. I
Oh my
swear.
gosh. On Fridays, we wear hot pink.
Yes, we do. It's quickly becoming my new favorite color. I love hot pink.
Well, I was so glad we were able to get the tech stuff figured out. I apologize. I had to come in through my phone. I guess it was
Oh,
maybe something with my computer that was just not
oh,
wanting to cooperate,
I
but we got
forgot
it
to
figured out.
tell you. Yes, I forgot to tell you to use your phone.
Okay.
And it's always something, even when I'm getting on Zoom or Google Meet, which I do every day.
Yeah.
It's different every time. Like,
Right.
why? Why?
Yep.
It's so annoying.
It's a learning, but we're learning.
Yes,
So we're
we
here now, and
are.
that's what matters. But I'm
Here's
really
the learning.
excited.
Learning
Yes.
and hot pink and coffee. I mean, I can't imagine a better year,
Yes.
a better
And
start to the year.
EMDR,
And
right?
EMD,
But I'm
of course.
so
Oh my gosh,
excited
of course.
to have you coming on board with us at the end of the month.
I'm so excited, y'all. Libby has invited me to join her as a coach, and consultant in her EMDR basic training, and I am so excited. This is something I've wanted to do, and I can't wait. But first, let's tell you more about Libby's unique approach to EMDR.
Yeah.
So, Libby, tell us about your brain, body, resilience focused EMDR.
Yes. So I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit just for anybody who's not familiar with EMDR. Like, what is EMDR? And so EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is an evidence-based technique. And if you're a psychotherapist, you'll understand that in our community, we really promote the use of evidence-based techniques. And so when we say something is evidence-based, it means that there's a body of research and evidence that has been replicated over a significant period of time, right? That really kind of provides the evidence for the effectiveness of the model that we're using. So that's the really cool thing about EMDR is that it's evidence based for things like PTSD, for anxiety, for depression. But actually, one of the first things I like to tell people is you don't necessarily have to have a diagnosable issue in order to benefit from EMDR therapy. And I know you and I both use EMDR in our private practices for things that are non-diagnosable.
Mhm.
Perfectionism, imposter syndrome, people pleasing. So EMDR is this comprehensive 8-phase model. And a lot of people think, hey, this is an intervention that's designed to treat trauma. Certainly it can treat traumatic experiences. But again, I like to kind of just bust through that myth initially that, oh, this is, just an intervention or a technique that's going to be good for someone with a PTSD diagnosis. Because I'm a big believer that really anybody can benefit from EMDR therapy. So if you're a therapist and you have clients that you've been working with for some time who've just really been, kind of feeling stuck and you're not sure, kind of what do we do next? Where do we go from here? EMDR can really be a great intervention and a great way to kind of get them unstuck and help them kind of get moving in the right direction. So I kind of always just like to introduce, what is EMDR?
Yes, absolutely. I definitely think of it as anywhere you're stuck, any pervasive old negative thoughts or patterns or beliefs, or, that's where it can really shine.
Absolutely.
Also, I want
if you
to,
know if you know something, right, but you're having trouble kind of enacting that in your
Mhm.
life, I think EMDR can really be that missing piece that can kind of help people go from, man, I know that this isn't working, I know this isn't who I want to be or how I want to be showing up, but to actually then be able to embody more of who they want to be and how they feel and how they think and how they behave. EMDR is unlike anything I've personally experienced as both a client and a clinician,
Yeah.
in terms of an overall approach. But I think you were going to say something there. I didn't mean to kind of jump in.
Oh gosh, no. I was just going to add that another huge myth that I hear all the time is that EMDR is just this.
Oh
And
yeah.
EMDR is an entire model, an entire theory, an entire framework of doing therapy or doing treatment. It is not, everyone thinks it's just, phases 3 through 7, which
Yes.
are,
Yep.
and it's not that at all. It's so much
Which
more.
which we as EMDR therapists would refer to as processing. So
Yes.
that's kind of something to know too, is that when you come in and you learn EMDR, a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'm just learning a trauma treatment intervention, and you are learning that, but again, like you're saying, Michelle, it's really a comprehensive model that you could use to take a client all the way from intake to discharge. So I just kind of
Mhm.
like to let folks know that up front, and then we can kind of start to talk about, what is EMDR training, because maybe you've
Mhm.
heard about EMDR, maybe you have some colleagues that are trained in EMDR, and you've heard about kind of some of the magic that it can create with clients, and so you're curious, well, what would I do if I wanted to become EMDR trained? The first step that you would want to take is finding an EMDREA approved basic training program.
Mhm.
And the awesome thing about resilience focused EMDR is that we are approved through EMDREA. So that's the International Association of EMDR, and they set all of the training standards for different EMDR basic trainings. And that's kind of the thing to know, is that every EMDR basic training is going to kind of have its own little touch or its own little flair. And so for our approach, the emphasis emphasis is really on resilience. It's really on trauma responsive EMDR therapy. We put a huge emphasis on neurobiology and helping the clinicians who are learning EMDR with us to not only have a fundamental understanding, at least as best we can, of how EMDR is working within the brain and the body and the nervous system,
Hmm.
but also to know that in a way that they feel comfortable communicating that information with their clients, because we find that being able to share kind of the brain science is a really great way to kind of help your new clients get buy-in with EMDR and the process.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite metaphor or analogy that you use to explain how that works?
Mm. That's a good one. I mean, one of my favorite things that I love to share with clients about EMDR is kind of that idea that when we're doing EMDR, we are jump starting your brain and body's natural ability to heal itself.
Yes.
But I think one of the best, kind of examples that we have right now for EMDR is actually Inside Out.
Oh,
Right? I don't know if you've seen the Inside Out movies, especially Inside
yeah.
Out 2, the most
EMDR
recent one
and
that came out.
parts work
Yes.
together.
Well, and it does a great job of highlighting what we would call the model of EMDR, which we call AIP, Adaptive
Mhm.
Information Processing. Because if you've seen Inside Out 2, there's the character Riley, and Riley has all of her emotions, but what you also see are these memory balls that are created by each experience that
Mhm.
Riley has. And then Joy takes those memory balls and she puts them down into her subconscious, and when they reach the subconscious, they shoot up that little thread, and that little thread says something positive or negative about Riley. And all of those threads come together to make her sense of self. And I was like, oh my gosh, that they must have
Yeah.
consulted with an EMDR therapist when they were developing Inside
Uh-huh.
Out, because it's very much that adaptive information processing perspective, which
Yes.
is, any issue that your client comes into therapy with, there's actually nothing wrong with them, right? It's actually the result of some sort of unprocessed, unresolved
Mhm.
past environment, relationship, or experience. And we know that, our brain has the power for neuroplasticity. We can change existing networks in the brain. And that's kind of what we're doing with EMDR is harnessing our brain's capacity for healing.
Yes. So it's like using the inside out analogy. It's like the negative beliefs about
Yep.
yourself, you know, or the world get into those memory balls and they get stored, even
Yes.
though they're not fully processed and they're not healthy for you, they're still kind of stored in those core memories. So
Yeah.
what we do with the EMDR is we go back, we retrieve them, we reprocess them. So at the very least, it doesn't ever change what happened, but it can put it in the past. It's over now.
And help you show up more adaptively in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing to remember. Just like in Inside Out, Riley had adaptive or helpful thoughts about herself, and then she had some unhelpful thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the same with each and every single one of us, is
Oh
that
yeah.
we're going to have adaptive and, unhelpful stuff as well. And so that's really what we're doing in EMDR is, whatever issue you're coming in to work on, we're trying to figure out, hey, what memories, right, might we need to work through in order to help you see the kind of change or progress. But I realized I got off on a tangent. I
No,
get
no.
really excited when I'm talking about EMDR. So I want to kind of come back to the
Yeah.
basic training piece, because
Yes.
we talked about, it's really good to find an MDRE approved basic training, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, each basic training is going to have a little bit of their own flair. And so we were starting to talk about resilience focused EMDR. And we can
Yes.
kind of come back to that in a minute because I'd love to highlight a few other things. But just for anyone who's, again, curious about EMDR basic training, like, what does that entail? And it is an intensive training. I'm sure that you can remember. Yep. That's our one of our required readings for the training.
Yep.
Um, but we do ours in a 5-day intensive format. So it is a 40-hour training.
Mm-hmm.
We are going from 8 a.m. to 5:30 each day, of course, with lunch breaks and 15-minute, breaks throughout the day. So you're definitely getting time, but it is a real energy and time commitment. Some basic training providers do offer the training in 2 parts. A lot of times those take place over weekends. And so for
Yeah.
me, for the reason of not wanting to encourage poor self-care, because we therapists have a tendency to do those sorts of things. But then I think too, just getting the information all together, right?
Mhm.
Because I took my basic training in two parts. And really, in the first half of the week, you're learning basic EMDR concepts.
Mhm.
And then by the end of the week, you're actually learning, okay, now how am I going to take these fundamental EMDR concepts and actually use them with complex clients, right? Because most
Mhm.
of us aren't working with single incident type trauma.
Mhm.
We're working with complex clients who may have decades, multiple traumatic incidents that they need to work through. Heck, may even have multiple presenting issues, right, that they're wanting to deal with in therapy. And so it's 40 hours of training that is broken down into 20 hours of lecture and then 20 hours of real time practice.
Yes.
So you're actually going to be doing and receiving EMDR throughout the week. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Just because it is, you want to make sure you're in the right place when you're coming for EMDR basic training. But I think it's also a fantastic opportunity for us as clinicians to maybe work through some of our own blocks.
Mhm.
I know that's been, critical for me. So would
I mean,
love to hear.
when I did my
Yeah.
EMDR basic training, I thought I want to really get something out of this that's going to help me. So I worked on my fear of flying, and I will
Oh,
tell you,
awesome.
it has just gotten better and better and better. I flew 14 times this year, 14 different flights. Not
Oh,
going to
wow.
say I love it, but I used to panic, cry, freak out, hyperventilate, and none of that has happened since I did EMDR, even just with a student colleague in my basic training.
Yeah. Isn't that
I
amazing? And
know.
that's the thing that always fascinates me, and something I'm excited to get to share with you now coming on as a coach and consultant, which is the magic, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot of our clients will describe it as magic, but even as a clinician, I do think there's a magical element to what we're
Mhm.
doing with EMDR, and it is pretty cool that our neurobiology is kind of set up in this way that, much like jump starting a dead car battery, we can kind of jumpstart this healing process. And that, again, even though you're working with someone who's brand new, they're literally reading from a script, that you can still experience a profound change in how you're thinking or feeling, about a particular experience.
Mhm.
So it's always cool to get to see the transformation from folks on day one of their EMDR basic training to the end of the week and, to Friday, where a lot of times folks are, again, don't get me wrong, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So by the end of the week, you are ready for a break and you're ready to kind of
Mhm.
let it all settle in and percolate. But people go from kind of on Monday, like feeling like Ricky Bobby, like, what am I going to do with my hands? And then on Friday, it's kind of like the dots have all connected and they're feeling more um, comfortable and familiar with EMDR. And so even though it does still feel like something that they need to practice, they're often feeling a lot more confident as opposed
Mhm.
to if they hadn't been practicing it all week and then had to go and
Oh,
try to implement that with their clients back in their office.
for
So,
sure. And that's kind of how it was for me. I did the two separated weekends, and they were separated by about 6 months. And in between, that's when I did a lot of my consultation and I did a lot of practice with my clients.
yes.
And I honestly, I mean, there is something to be said for, hey, client, I'm learning this new thing. It's kind of weird. Do you want to play with it with me? And that's absolutely fine.
Right.
Um, but on the other hand, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing until the second training. So
Right.
people are going to come out of this just ready to practice EMDR with their clients.
And excited too. I think that's,
Yeah.
a big part of it is that when you learn EMDR, I think there's a lot of, in the theory itself, there are a lot of things that I think are very validating to kind of this intuitive knowledge. Like if you find yourself to be an intuitive therapist, or
Mm-hmm.
if you prefer more bottom up type approaches as opposed to more thought based approaches, like I think EMDR is really something you're going to resonate with. But I do want to pick on one thing that you said because it's really important, which is the consultation.
Mm,
Because we know that theoretically, basic training is 50 hours, it's not 40 hours.
right.
So that's kind of the catch, is that you have this 40-hour intensive training. That's your classroom portion, where again, lecture and then real time practice of EMDR. And then after that, you have 1 year, so 365 days from the start date of your basic training to complete your 10 hours of
Mm-hmm.
consultation. And so essentially the folks who are in the training with you, so myself, the amazing coaches and consultants like Michelle, we also have, a handful of other folks that are on a part of our team.
And
After
they
you
are
do the,
all great people. I just want to say
Oh, yes.
almost everyone you've brought on are people I know personally, have met. I mean, you are building an amazing team.
Yes. And I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do here too. And I know you and I have talked about it, but community, right? Because
Hmm.
we don't want this to be a transactional thing. Like we would really like to create relationships with our trainees so that we can continue to support them in whatever way that looks like, beyond basic training. But so
Hmm.
you have that 10 hours and then a year from the start date of your basic training to complete that. Again, you're doing phone calls or Zoom meetings where you're basically just bringing your current cases and you're saying, hey, this person is a client. Are they a good candidate for EMDR? Or, hey, I tried a resource with this client and they had this reaction. What do I do now? Or
Hmm.
maybe you did some processing with a client or, things of that nature. So you're bringing your cases in real time so that you can
Hmm.
get support, which I think is a really beneficial thing because again, there is a learning curve with EMDR. There's no way that you can possibly retain everything from your basic
No.
training, after that 5 days. And so that consultation, a lot of people find a ton of value, not just in learning, from the feedback they get on their cases, but also from listening to the other folks that are on the call, sharing the challenges or kind of the questions that they're having about EMDR. So at
Hmm.
the end of that 50 hours, that is when you can say that you are EMDR trained. You do get your CE certificate at the end of your classroom experience. So I do just want to throw that
Hmm.
out there. This is eligible for CEs, and we are an NBCC approved continuing education provider. This program has also been approved through the Ohio Counselor Social Work and Marriage and Family Therapist Board. That's a mouthful, but yes, they are all in one
I
here
think
in Ohio.
I think now it's also like art therapist, music therapist.
Oh,
It's,
really?
I don't know that they've added those into the acronym, but they've added them under our board.
Okay, okay, interesting. But so in general, should be good for CEs across the board, kind of no
Hmm.
matter what discipline, you're coming in from.
Hmm.
That's something you and I need to sidebar about, by the way, is getting some CEs for social workers and things like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
as
definitely.
far
But
as,
in the meantime, I want to point out to everyone that
yeah,
having this Ohio social work board approval for most states, if not all, I hesitate to
right,
say all, but
right.
most states will accept another state's approved CEUs. So
Yeah,
if you're in, Arizona and you want to take this training and you're a social worker, reach out to your board because there's a really good chance they'll accept it.
absolutely, absolutely. So, but yeah,
Tammy
so that's
Moore is
that's that.
here. Oh my gosh, I just have to say, Tammy Moore is here. She's one of my favorite people. She was my good friend in grad school, and she went on to become an EMDR trainer, and she was one of the coach
Yay,
consultants in my basic training.
that's
Yay!
fantastic. Well,
Hi,
we're so glad to have
Tammy.
her.
Yeah, so Tammy, this is Libby, and I am coming on as a coach and consultant with Libby's basic training. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yep, we're so excited to have you. I think
Yay!
it's going to be a lot of fun and to kind of circle full circle back to resilience focused EMDR. I think part of my inspiration, for developing resilience focused EMDR was kind of this sense that like before I got EMDR trained, I was already a trauma responsive therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we've talked about this, but when learning the model, I felt like I connected with certain aspects differently, especially because I'm also trained in biofeedback. And so a lot of people coming into EMDR training, they get really, really caught up with what you were talking about when we started out, which is the processing phases of EMDR, which
Mm-hmm.
is 3 through 6. And that's where we're doing eye movements, bilateral stimulation, and we're working to resolve a trauma. And so that's kind of like everybody is like, ooh, ah, right? But there's also this phase in EMDR that is all about resource building and is all about helping our clients to develop a distress tolerance and develop the capacity to influence where they're at in their nervous system. For anyone who's in polyvagal theory, like, are we in the fight or flight? Are we in the freeze, submit, collapse? Are we in the relax and digest? And so we would call that phase 2 preparation. But in preparation, we're doing a lot of this resourcing where we're teaching clients how to access good feelings and how to shift their internal experience. And so, again, having learned biofeedback, that to me was like, oh my gosh, this is a part of EMDR that we can really help people understand has so many more benefits, even just beyond creating the initial safety that's necessary in order to do somebody's trauma work, right?
Mhm.
Because with those resources, if we use them in the right way, and we don't just do the what but the how, right? And we teach our clients the difference between reactive use of resources, which is coping, and proactive use of resources, which is regulation.
Mhm.
We can literally reprogram a client's baseline mood state with some positive emotional resources, and that's not even touching, right, the trauma stuff that we can address with other phases of EMDR.
Yes,
So
which
that's a
means that when you go home for the holidays and you run into your ex, you don't have to spiral and panic
yes.
and freak out. You can regulate.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so that's one of the cool things about our training, because the number one question I kept getting in consultation is what other resources, right? Because everybody knows the peaceful place, everybody knows the container, they've done
Mhm.
deep breathing. They're like, what else do you have? And we know peaceful place isn't actually going to work for all of our clients because
Right.
that's felt safety and that can be actually triggering for
Yeah,
them.
it
So,
backfires a
um,
lot, I have found.
oh, yeah.
You know,
And
especially if they say, like, I'm going to grandma's house. I'm like, oh, no, we're not, because grandma's almost always backfires.
right, right, exactly. So the cool thing about these resources is that for the resilience focused EMDR basic training, we've actually added about 5 scripts that you're not going to find in other basic trainings. And these additional scripts, they're really versatile, so they can be used with complex clients in a situation where, let's say, peaceful place wasn't working for you. That you would have like a handful of other scripts that you can choose from that are still going to be positive emotional resources, that are still very much going to be in the vein of what we try to teach our clients when we're doing resourcing in the sense of EMDR. So that's kind of one of the cool things that
Yeah,
is a little bit different about resilience focused EMDR.
I love that. And I have heard Libby teach, and she has a knack for really making that brain body connection make sense. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super excited to be part of this training and for everybody who's signed up for this training.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, me too. I can't wait to have you, and I can't wait to pull you in and for you to be able to share, your knowledge and experiences. Because I think that's a big part of the learning too, is, understand when you come to an EMDR basic training, it's not just going to be, me sitting there talking at you all week about all of the amazing EMDR experiences, although I am going to share some success stories. You're also going to hear the challenging
Mhm.
cases or the
Yeah.
times when it didn't go the way that we thought it would go. And personally, as an educator, I think there's a whole lot more value in learning when things don't go as smoothly. But that's
Yeah.
kind of another benefit, is that when you register for the training, you get your own individual student account. You're also going to get kind of a training kit, I like to call it, with a workbook, a manual, visual aids, some fun fidgets that you can use for the 40-hour training. Um, but essentially you're also going to get a student account, and on that student account there are videos of me doing EMDR with real clients. And so the cool thing about that is you have that video content before, during, and after the training. So at any point,
Mhm.
if you want to go back and review that material, you also have that there as well.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
love it.
really tried to think of all the things that I would want in a training, right? Because I don't know about you, but I love to learn. I love to do continuing
Mhm.
education. And so, just really trying to be intentional, because I'm of the mind, like, why can't we have nice things too?
Mhm.
We can have pretty colorful manuals. And, that was another thing that I really wanted to be intentional about too, like from our slides to our workbook.
Mhm.
They're full color, they're full of imagery, and we've actually had a lot of trainees kind of come and say how helpful that was, especially folks who are neurodivergent, right? Because if you're just looking at language on slides for 40 hours, that can get
Mhm.
really taxing and make it really hard to understand, the concepts. But we're very intentional about using imagery that kind of brings the concepts to life, and
Mhm.
metaphors, like you're saying, that can be really helpful when you're learning EMDR, because it's not just a protocol, it's a whole language. I'm
It
sure,
is.
as you can tell, we keep throwing different terminology back and forth. So
Even
that's another thing
to
to know.
this day, even now, like I'll be working with someone who's working towards certification. And they'll, I'll say something like, well, are you looking at it through the lens of the AIP model? And they're like, what's that? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, that's not okay that you got through basic training and you don't know what that
Right.
is. Like, we're going to make sure you know what that is, because if it
Absolutely.
is the underpinning of the whole thing, not just the reprocessing, but how we conceptualize therapy, you
Yeah.
know? I was trained during that heyday in the early 2000s of brief, strategic, and solution focused. We
Yes.
had 5 sessions of EAP to put a
Wow.
band-aid on somebody.
Yep.
And I was actually taught, like, we're not looking at the past. The past doesn't actually matter. You want to look at current symptoms and find solutions.
Mm.
And when I got trained in EMDR, I was like, see, I knew the past mattered.
Yes, yes. Because we
It
like to
really,
say the
really
past is
matters.
in the present, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to see something change in the present, you often do have to look to the past and figure out, hey, what are those unresolved environments,
Mhm.
relationships, or experiences? So I think that's the cool thing about EMDR training too is again, you're learning this theory that helps you not only understand your clients better, really everybody you interact with, the
Mhm.
people in your personal life, yourself,
Mhm.
right? Which I
Mhm.
think is another gift that for me came from EMDR basic training is I then became a client of EMDR. And, I know we've talked about this, but I could not be where I'm at today professionally, having my own private practice, having my own EMDR model and my own training company if it weren't for EMDR therapy and the effects that
Yeah.
it's had on me personally as a client of
Mhm.
EMDR. So,
That's
um,
why I got trained too. I was
yep,
in a bad car accident, and my therapist said, I think you need EMDR. And, that's how I was introduced to it. And I said, okay, I want to get trained in this,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the things we say on the first day of the training. That this, if you're open to it, the training this week, it will not just change your clinical practice, it will change your life.
Hmm.
And I love to say I told you so on Friday because we get to see it
Yeah.
happen as the coach and the trainer throughout the week. We get to kind of observe those changes. And it's such a beautiful thing too. And again, another thing I'm excited to bring you in on, because as therapists, we can only see so many one-to-one clients, right?
Hmm.
And so I think when we're doing these things as coaches, as consultants, as trainers, we are in this space of being able to multiply, and that gives me chills because it's like, because I can only touch so many individuals. But
Yes.
when we're doing this, we kind of create new EMDR therapists that can go out there and amplify, the
Oh,
benefits of EMDR.
love a scalable impact.
Yes,
Yes. And I think about that with teaching CEUs and with, consulting and training. It's like every one of those therapists takes that new knowledge to their client, who then takes it to their families, who those people then, because they are more regulated, their interactions change. I mean, it really does change the world. And I'm not overstating that.
absolutely. The ripple effect.
Yeah.
So. But we definitely want people to know, we offer these virtual trainings on a regular basis. We also do offer in-person trainings. I actually, something, again, we'll have to sidebar about, would love to get an in-person training maybe next year in the Columbus area and we can
Oh,
do
yeah.
something in
Let's
person
do it.
together. So
Let's.
already thinking about, the 2026 calendar, but we
Mm-hmm.
have a number of in-person and virtual trainings listed on our website. I do know that we have one in Northern Kentucky University early August for anyone who's looking for in person.
Okay.
We have a virtual again at the end of this month. Michelle and I are going to be
Mm-hmm.
together, bringing a whole new group of therapists through the EMDR training process so they can go forth and use the magic of EMDR with their clients. And then our next virtual will be in April because
Mm-hmm.
we're going to the Bay Area to see Vanessa Soli. So we're going to
Oh,
do a
nice.
training there in February. And then in March, I will be in St. Louis, Missouri to see Mackenzie again.
Yeah.
So she's not a coach or consultant yet, but I keep trying to like pull her in and, bring her to the dark side because she loves EMDR therapy like
Yes.
us.
Well, I'm going to be in October. I'm going to be in St. Louis with Mackenzie sponsoring the CEs for her
Yes. Oh,
symposium. So, yeah,
awesome.
Radiant
Cool.
Resilience
Yep.
Symposium.
Yep.
Okay, so Libby has this training coming up. This is my first time being a coach consultant with Libby. So I am certified in EMDR. I am an approved consultant, but I'm going to be learning her model right alongside all of you. And I'm going to be coaching with you as you practice,
Hmm.
and helping you really get comfortable with that protocol. And then I'll be available for a consultation as well. So I really, really hope you can join us. We have a $200 off code,
Yes.
which I'm going to share in my stories. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Sure.
Is I'll share it in my stories with the link. This is my kind of affiliate partner link. And I will share the $200 off code. We do
Yep.
still have some spaces left in our training. So hope that you can join us. If you're thinking about getting trained in EMDR, this is it. Do it early in the year so that you have all year to really get comfortable and build out that part of your practice.
Absolutely. And especially if you're thinking about going into private practice, EMDR is a skill set that is in high demand, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really something that you can use to justify raising your rates, going off insurance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are some really, I think, great business opportunities that I think can be a result of getting EMDR trained as well. So
Oh, I
we
agree.
hope you'll
And
join
census.
us.
I recently, now this is an advanced training. Once you've done your basic training, the sky is the
Yep.
limit. And I did a training on doing group EMDR. So there's a lot you can do with it. An early incident, and yeah,
Yeah,
but you got to get this
absolutely.
first. You got to get the basics first. And when I consult with people, I'm always going back to this book. I nerd out
Yeah.
on it. I highlight it. When you do your first ever basic training, you are not going to know what a word of this means.
Yeah, it's like another language,
It
basically.
is. But then as you go through it and just little by little, you'll start to understand.
Absolutely.
Francine really was brilliant when she developed this model.
Oh yeah, it's so like I said, I think it's really an intuitive model. And so if you find yourself to be an intuitive therapist, there is something that I think is really intuitive about the concepts that we're talking about. But really quickly before we
Yeah.
disconnect and everyone's getting a super close up, I wanted to share our materials because what is
Yeah.
more fun than getting like stuff for training? And so here is our manual, and you'll have to send me your address because I'm going to
Oh,
get you a copy of this
yes.
too, just so you can kind of see the full color imagery. And it's literally like a manual. It's got
Hmm.
references, and we've got a glossary with all of the terms that you're going to learn, and then we also have your workbook. So this is what you'll use as you're going through the different practicum sessions. And again, we're not going to throw you to the wolves. There are scripts that you're going to be reading from throughout the week just to make it easier as you're learning EMDR. And then this is something I'm really excited about. I didn't get visual aids in my initial basic training, but we wanted to give you all some visual aids that you could then use. This is our VOC scale, and this is our SUD scale. So for all my EMDR therapists, you'll know what those are. And for the trainees, you'll get to learn more about that at your training.
Awesome. I made a fun one too, Libby, that if it works with your program, I'd be happy to share. I made a non-numeric suds chart
Oh,
that
cool.
has coffee cups and animals, and
I love that. I love that.
because some clients can't do numeric suds, and you don't even know what that means if you haven't taken EMDR basic training yet. So you have to come see
Yep.
us and do the training, and we'll teach you what that means.
Absolutely. We would love to have you. We would love to, as I like to say, bring you to the dark side of EMDR. There's a lot of running jokes about EMDR therapists that you will literally know that someone is an EMDR therapist before you know their name.
Mhm.
So we wanna help you kind of take advantage of this because like I say, in graduate school, they're really big on counseling is all about helping your clients find the answers that they have inside of themselves, and then all of the techniques I learned felt like I was in the driver's seat, forever working harder than my client. And
Mhm.
that for me has been one of the best parts about EMDR, is that I
Mhm.
really do feel like I'm facilitating the healing process versus guiding it, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm really like jump starting a dead car battery. Not that it doesn't require any skill, because it definitely does. There's a lot of nuance in EMDR, but it definitely feels a lot more true to kind of that message of your client has the answers inside themselves.
You
And when
do.
I do EMDR, I really feel like I'm getting to honor that, and really, facilitate my client healing themselves in a way. So,
We all have days where we are not feeling our best as therapists, and maybe we don't know what to say or we're not sure how to help someone. And for me, like going back to the standard protocol, I've been doing EMDR for 8 years, and I still to this day pull out my old cheat sheets of the standard protocol because it works. Even when I'm not on the top of my game, even when I'm not the most brilliant, insightful therapist in the world, EMDR works. Like you said, we set it up, setting up the protocol, setting up the
Yep.
targets. That's jump starting that battery, and then their brain does the healing. I don't have to do the
Yeah.
healing. It's so much pressure off.
Right. It's so cool to watch that too. Like there really is a fulfillment, I think, that comes as being the therapist and seeing someone go through that
Mm-hmm.
process. Because again, you know that they've gotten to the answer that is right and true for them instead of it being imposed from some sort of outside source. So it's a really beautiful thing. And again, we hope that you'll join us for EMDR basic training this year.
Absolutely. So check my stories, check Libby's stories. Libby, once you see it, you can just share it. I'll share
Yep.
my link in there. I'll share the code for the $200 off. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Reach out to me, reach out to Libby. We're happy to
Absolutely.
answer questions, or if you're not quite sure if it's for you, we can help you make that decision. It might not be. There's no
Yeah.
pressure here. But if it is, we want you, to be able to join us.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So watch my stories. Make sure that you follow us both on Instagram. If you're not already following, just tap that follow button and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Anything else, Libby?
Thanks so
Any
much.
last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just wanted to say again, thanks for
Of
having me. Can't wait to
course.
have you onboarded as a coaching consultant, and we're going to have some fun here in a few weeks. So we hope to see everybody there.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. And I was just telling Libby that I cleared my entire schedule because I know this is going to be a big, like, even for the evenings. I'm not doing anything else but this
Yeah.
because I know it's going to be like EMDR and self care.
Yep.
That's going to be my.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you soon. And everybody have a wonderful day. Make sure you tell us that you stopped by in the replay. And we'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you soon. Bye
Bye.
bye.